I can still hear the laughter. Not the kind that warms a room, the kind that slices through it. When my husband Ethan and I walked into that ballroom, dressed head to toe in matching lion and tiger suits, fur and face paint and all, I thought we'd nailed the theme. The text said, "Costume party. Be creative." But when the elevator doors slid open, every head turned. Women in shimmering gowns, men in tailored tuxedos, and us, two oversized zoo mascots, standing under a chandelier that cost more than my first car. For a second, I thought maybe we were early or at the wrong place.
But then I saw them, my family.
My stepmother Veronica, her lips curling into that all-too-familiar smirk. My half-sister Chloe, whispering something behind her champagne glass. Ethan squeezed my paw-gloved hand. "It's fine, Mads," he whispered. But the heat rising behind my eyes said otherwise. I forced a laugh, trying to play along. "Oh, come on. You said costume." Nobody laughed with me. The room swallowed me whole. The music, the murmurs, the shame. Every mocking glance was a reminder of exactly why I'd stayed away so long. And later, when I checked my phone, there it was, the text from Chloe. A photo of Ethan and me in those ridiculous suits, captioned, "Guess the jungle really does have Wi-Fi." That was the moment I knew this wasn't an accident. It was a setup, a family tradition really making me the joke. Only this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. When I was little, my mother used to tell me that families are like trees. Some branches grow apart, she'd say, but the roots always hold them together. That was before she passed. Before my father married Veronica. Veronica Hale, the kind of woman who could smile and wound you at the same time. Perfect posture, perfect lipstick, perfect lies. She moved into our house and rearranged everything, the furniture, the rules, and eventually me. By the time I turned 16, I barely recognized the place I'd grown up in. My room, the one Mom painted yellow, had been redone in muted gray. My spot at the dinner table was accidentally taken by her daughter, Chloe. And every time I spoke, it was followed by the quiet sound of Veronica's disapproval, that little sigh that made my father shift uncomfortably and change the subject. I learned early that silence kept me safe, that swallowing my words was easier than watching them roll their eyes. But I still remember the day I finally spoke up. It was my high school graduation dinner. I'd gotten a scholarship, full ride, business and design. I stood up, beaming, expecting pride. Instead, Veronica laughed softly and said, "Well, that's cute, Madison, but you know your kind of degrees rarely pay bills." My kind. As if ambition was something to be ashamed of. I looked at my father, but he didn't meet my eyes. He just picked up his glass and said, "She's trying her best, Ronnie." Like I was some kid showing off a doodle, not the woman who'd fought for her own future. That night, I packed a small suitcase, clothes, a laptop, and the one thing my mother left me, a tiny silver compass pendant, engraved with the words, "Find your own north." I left without saying goodbye. No dramatic speech. No tears. Just one last glance at the life that never really made room for me. For years, that compass hung around my neck through every job, every rejection, every heartbreak. Whenever I got lost, and I often did, I'd hold it and whisper, "North, Madison." Always north. Back then, I thought leaving meant I'd escaped them. But standing in that ballroom years later, in that ridiculous lion suit, I realized I'd only run in circles. Because sometimes, no matter how far you go, the past still finds you dressed in fur. Starting over wasn't some movie montage with upbeat music. It was quiet, lonely,
Exhausting.
I rented a tiny studio apartment in Portland, the kind with peeling paint and a heater that hissed louder than it worked. But it was mine. My first home built entirely by my own paycheck and cheap instant noodles. The first year, I worked 2 jobs. Days at a small graphic studio where my boss called me kiddo, and nights designing wedding invites for clients who barely paid. Still, I poured my soul into every layout, every curve, every font, every color that told someone's story. There were nights I'd fall asleep at my desk, tracing that silver compass pendant, whispering, "North, Madison." always north. And then one day, an email changed everything. A small eco-friendly fashion brand had seen my designs online and wanted me to do their rebranding. It wasn't much money, but it was the first time someone saw me as a professional, not a pity case. I said yes. And then I said yes again.
And again.
Within a year, I built my own studio, Hale Creative, named after the woman they thought would never amount to anything. That's also when Ethan came into my life. He wasn't loud or flashy. He had the kind of calm that made you believe storms could pass. He met me at a local design conference. I was presenting a project, terrified, and afterward he said, "You spoke like you were building something no one else could see yet. I want to help you build it." And he did. He'd bring me coffee at midnight, sit beside me while I worked, and remind me to look up when I forgot how far I'd come. Together, we turned Hale Creative into a boutique agency, small, yes, but powerful enough to make a name for itself. I never told my family. They thought I was just doing freelance stuff, a convenient label for someone they'd stop checking in on. It was easier that way. No expectations. No judgment. No fake support. By the 5th year, we were working with big brands, luxury hotels, even nonprofits. Ethan handled clients. I handled design and vision. And quietly, we became the success story no one saw coming. Still, every time I opened my email and saw a client praising my work, I'd hear Veronica's voice somewhere in the back of my head. "Cute, Madison. But you know your kind of degrees rarely pay bills." So I paid more than bills. I paid for peace and silence and dignity. And for 7 years, I built a life so full, so secure, that I almost forgot where I came from. Almost. Until that family reunion invitation arrived. A white embossed envelope, addressed in my father's handwriting. Hale family reunion, formal dinner, dress code, costume party, be creative. Ethan had grinned when he read it. "Finally, they're loosening up," he'd said. I'd smiled too, because maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to go back not as the outcast, but as the woman who made it. If only I'd known. The joke was already waiting for me. I didn't sleep that night after the reunion. Ethan tried to make me laugh, he always does, but even he couldn't soften the sting. That photo Chloe posted had gone viral within the family chat. My father hadn't defended me. No one had. It wasn't just about the animal suits. It was the reminder that after all these years, I was still their entertainment, the outsider they could mock without consequence. But what they didn't know was that I'd already built something far bigger than their approval. A few days later, an opportunity appeared, poetic almost. Our agency had just acquired a new event space for luxury brand launches. The first event? A formal family appreciation brunch, hosted by Hale Creative for our top clients. And since my maiden name was still Hale, the invites went out to every major contact, including, by design, the Hale Family Group email. 2 weeks later, I watched them walk through the glass doors of my new downtown venue, all silk, arrogance, and confusion. Veronica's eyes scanned the modern interior, high ceilings, white marble floors, gold accents, and the massive LED sign behind the bar that read, "Hale Creative, where vision begins." My father was the first to speak. "Madison, you work here?" I smiled. "I own it." Silence. A heavy, delicious kind. Ethan appeared at my side, looking impossibly proud in his suit. No for this time, just quiet elegance. He handed me a glass of champagne and whispered, "You ready?" I nodded. "Good afternoon, everyone," I began, stepping onto the small stage. "I'm Madison Hale, founder and creative director of Hale Creative. Some of you might know me as the girl who once wore a lion suit to a family reunion." A few guests laughed politely, not knowing the story's weight. But across the room, I saw Chloe's smile falter. Veronica's hand tightened around her clutch. "I was told it was a costume party," I continued, letting a hint of humor lace my words. But maybe that night was the best mistake I ever made, because it reminded me how it feels to be underestimated. I paused, scanning their faces. The thing is, when people stop believing in you, you learn to build your own belief system. You stop seeking approval, and you start creating results. My father's expression shifted, guilt creeping into the corners. For the first time, he wasn't looking through me.
He was seeing me.
After the speech, a few of my clients approached, business owners, designers, even a fashion investor, each of them greeting me with admiration. Chloe watched as I exchanged cards with people who once wouldn't have given me a second glance. I saw the realization dawn on her. This wasn't some freelance gig. This was power. Later, as the crowd thinned, Veronica came up to me. "Madison," she said, forcing a smile, "you've really surprised us." I looked her dead in the eye. That's what happens when you stop expecting me to fail. Ethan slipped his hand around my waist, grounding me. My father finally spoke. His voice was soft. "I should have defended you, Mads." That night, and long before it. For the first time in years, I believed he meant it. I didn't need their apologies, but hearing them was like exhaling after holding my breath for a decade. I raised my glass, meeting their eyes one last time. "To family," I said, smiling. "May we always remember what happens when you tell a hail to be creative." After everyone left the event, I stayed behind. The lights dimmed, the music softened, and the faint scent of champagne lingered in the air. For the first time, I felt peace, not the fragile kind that can be taken away, but the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are. The next morning, my father called. He wanted to talk. So, a week later, I met them all, my father, Veronica, and Chloe, at a quiet cafe near the river. Ethan came with me, not because I needed protection, but because he wanted to witness closure. When I walked in, Veronica smiled too wide. "Maddie, we're so proud of you," she said. "You've really turned into quite the businesswoman." I smiled back. "Funny. That's not what you said last time I tried to share my dreams." She shifted, her smile cracking slightly. My father leaned forward. "We made mistakes, honey." "I made mistakes. I should have supported you more." I stirred my coffee slowly, letting the silence stretch. "I don't need an apology," I said finally. "What I need are boundaries." They exchanged glances. "Boundaries?" Chloe echoed. "Yes," I said. "If you want to be in my life, that means no more mockery. No more comparisons. No more jokes at my expense. And when you speak to me, you speak with respect, not as the girl who left, but as the woman who built something from nothing." Veronica opened her mouth, but I didn't let her interrupt. "And Chloe," I said gently, "I saw that post you made the night of the reunion. I'm not angry anymore. But I need you to understand, public humiliation isn't a form of love. It's cruelty dressed in pearls." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I really am. It was stupid." "I believe you," I said softly. "But words don't rebuild bridges, actions do." Then I turned to my father. "And all I ever wanted was for you to believe me. Not fix things. Not choose sides. Just see me." He looked down, ashamed. "I see you now, Mads." "I promise I do." I nodded. "Then let's start from there." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lash out. I simply laid my conditions on the table: truth, respect, honesty. And, to my surprise, they listened. Maybe for the first time in my life, they really heard me. As we stood to leave, Veronica hesitated. "Madison," she said quietly, "you're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." I smiled. "No, Veronica. I've always been strong. You just never looked close enough to see it." When we stepped outside, the wind carried the smell of spring, clean, bright, new. Ethan slipped his hand into mine. "You okay?" I exhaled slowly. For the first time, I said, "I think I am." A month after that meeting, I found myself back in the same ballroom where everything began. This time, it wasn't a reunion, it was my company's anniversary gala. The chandeliers sparkled, the music swayed softly, and the room pulsed with energy: clients, employees, friends, laughter. But the noise didn't overwhelm me anymore. It lifted me. Veronica and Chloe were there too, invited, not out of obligation, but choice. They came dressed elegantly, no masks, no performance. Chloe helped with some of the event logistics. Actually, she'd asked me to mentor her in branding. I said yes. Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. My father came too, standing off to the side, watching with quiet pride. At one point, he walked over and handed me something, a small velvet box. Inside was my mother's silver compass pendant, newly polished, the engraving still intact. Find your own north. He smiled. Your mom would have been proud of you, Mads. I didn't cry, not then. I just nodded, because somewhere deep down, I knew she already was. When the lights dimmed and the speeches began, I stepped up to the stage once again, this time not to prove myself, but to share myself. I used to think success was about proving people wrong, I said into the microphone. But it's really about proving to yourself that you were always enough, even when no one else believed it. I paused, scanning the crowd, my team, my family, my husband. They were all there, no costumes, no masks, no laughter at my expense. Sometimes, I continued, life dresses you up as a joke, so you can learn how to walk back in as the punchline and own it. The audience laughed softly, warmly. I looked at Ethan, who smiled that same quiet, proud smile that had carried me through the darkest nights. He mouthed, North. I smiled back. North, I whispered. And as the music swelled and lights danced across the room, I realized something. I wasn't the joke anymore. I was the story. And every time they tried to laugh at me, I was just being written into my next chapter. Soft final line. Voice steady. Cinematic pause before fade out. They told me to wear a costume, but I never needed one to show them who I really was.